Welcome to AI ConvoCast, where we bring you the latest in AI and tech innovation. Quick housekeeping. Check out the affiliate links in our description. Using them supports the show, and please don't forget to rate, review, and share if you like what you hear. Let's jump right in. Today, we will be looking at the head-to-head release of GPT 5.3 Codex and Claude Opus 4.6, two major flagship models that dropped on the exact same day in early February 2026. And we will dig into what each one actually brings to the table, how the benchmarks stack up, what real users are saying, and the safety conversations happening around both. So let us get into it. On February 5th, 2026, both OpenAI and Anthropic decided to launch their latest flagship models on the same day. OpenAI dropped GPT 5.3 Codex, framing it as a Codex-native agent that merges high-end coding performance with broader reasoning and what they describe as professional work on a computer. Anthropic launched Claude Opus 4.6 the same day, positioning it as an upgrade aimed at long-running agent work, tool use, and enterprise knowledge work that goes beyond pure software development. The fact that both landed simultaneously became its own story. Multiple outlets jumped on the timing, and online commentary quickly adopted a coding wars framing. Now, when it comes to actually getting your hands on these models, there are some meaningful differences. GPT 5.3 Codex is positioned as immediately usable inside the Codex ecosystem, so that is the Codex app, the CLI, the IDE extension, and the web interface, all for paid ChatGPT plans. API availability, however, is described as rolling out soon, so developers wanting to build on it programmatically are waiting a bit. Claude Opus 4.6, on the other hand, launched across Claude products and the API simultaneously, with a heavy emphasis on enterprise distribution through cloud platforms. It also comes with a 1 million token context option in beta. For additional context, OpenAI had actually launched the Codex desktop app for macOS a few days earlier, on February 2nd, describing it as a command center for agents, which set the stage for the GPT 5.3 Codex announcement. What is genuinely interesting about these two releases is that they feel like different philosophical answers to the same fundamental question, which is, how should a coding agent behave when it is working over hours or days or across a massive codebase? OpenAI's messaging with GPT 5.3 Codex leans heavily into interactive steering and faster iteration loops. They repeatedly emphasize the ability to steer the model mid-execution without losing context, and they are pushing Codex beyond just code generation toward operating a computer end-to-end. The Codex changelog highlights mid-turn steering and real-time responsiveness as first-class user experience improvements, not just raw model quality bumps. OpenAI also made the attention-grabbing claim that the model was instrumental in creating itself during internal training, deployment, and debugging workflows, which predictably got amplified across both news outlets and community discussions. Anthropic took a different angle with Opus 4.6, leaning into autonomous decomposition, long context stability, and configurable thinking for agents. Their release post directly addresses what they call context rot, which is basically the problem of models losing track of important information in very long conversations. They claim strong results at the 1 million token scale in beta, plus improvements in deep reasoning after absorbing long contexts. On the API side, Anthropic introduced controls that are very agent engineer-oriented, things like adaptive thinking, effort levels, context compaction, and a large output limit. In the broader coverage, Opus 4.6 was frequently framed as a push beyond developer-only hype toward broader enterprise work products like documents, spreadsheets, and presentations. Both vendors are clearly positioning their flagship coding model as spanning the full software lifecycle plus adjacent professional work. The real difference is less about what they can theoretically do and more about how they expect teams to supervise the work. Now let us talk benchmarks, because the early comparison discourse is extremely benchmark-heavy. But the truly important thing to understand is that many of the most cited numbers are not directly comparable. Some measure model-only reasoning and coding, some measure agent plus model performance with different harnesses or scaffolding around them, some rely on different definitions like SWE Bench Verified versus SWE Bench Pro, and most depend on tuning choices like extra high reasoning effort versus default settings. Here is what the primary sources show. OpenAI reported GPT 5.3 Codex at extra high reasoning effort, hitting 56.8% on SWE Bench Pro Public, 77.3% on Terminal Bench 2.0, 64.7% on OSWorld Verified, and 70.9% wins or ties on GDPval. Anthropic's disclosed numbers for Opus 4.6 show 65.4% on Terminal Bench 2.0, 80.8% on SWE Bench Verified, 72.7% on OSWorld, 84% on BrowseComp, and 40% on Humanity's Last Exam without tools, jumping to 53.1% with tools. The Terminal Bench 2.0 public leaderboard tells its own story. Simple Codex plus GPT 5.3 Codex hit 75.1% and was ranked number 1 at the time of capture, while Droid plus Claude Opus 4.6 came in at 69.9% at number 2. The core takeaway from this leaderboard is that agent harness choice materially changes outcomes. Multiple entries exist for the same underlying model with different agent implementations, which is why OpenAI can claim a very high internal terminal bench score, while the public leaderboard shows different peaks depending on the harness, and Anthropic's own reported numbers circulate alongside the Droid harness leaderboard results. On SWE Bench specifically, OpenAI explicitly positions SWE Bench Pro as a harder multilingual and contamination-resistant variant beyond SWE Bench Verified, which historically is Python only. That complicates headline score comparisons when one vendor highlights Pro and the other highlights Verified. Turning to what actual users are saying, and keep in mind these releases are only days old as of early February 2026, so we are looking at workflow anecdotes and tooling friction rather than long-term productivity studies. A recurring theme across community discussions is that the two models feel philosophically distinct in practice. GPT 5.3 Codex is discussed as an interactive collaborator you steer mid-execution, while Opus 4.6 is framed as more autonomous and more thoughtful. Many commenters suspect the real differentiator will come down to how people prefer to work rather than which benchmark is higher. That said, there is plenty of pushback too, with some users reporting the tone and autonomy feel is actually reversed in their own usage, reinforcing that early impressions depend heavily on interface, settings, and task type. Across community forums, early sentiment falls into a few buckets. One group argues Codex code is more trustworthy while conceding that Claude's environment and rapid UX iteration are strong. One prominent post describes preferring Claude code as an environment, but trusting recent Codex outputs more for certain backend work while also weighing subscription economics. Another group is enthusiastic about Opus 4.6's multi-agent orchestration, but concerned about quota burn and token consumption. One user described the excitement of managing 6 agents simultaneously, while also observing heavy usage consumption and reverting to a plan with Opus, right with Sonnet workflow to control costs. A third group frames the models as complementary depending on latency tolerance, with one comparison describing Opus being faster in an initial PR review, but Codex taking longer and returning more detailed reproducible findings, leading to the heuristic of Opus as daily driver and Codex for really hard problems if you are willing to wait. On OpenAI's developer forum, reactions follow a classic launch pattern with high excitement, immediate claims of productivity leaps, plus complaints about speed and latency, variability on launch day. One noteworthy thread praises GPT 5.3 Codex's apparent tendency toward red-green test-driven behavior, while another user reports it feeling slower than 5.2 in their usage, suggesting load or rollout differences can dominate subjective impressions. On the enterprise side, this is unusually important because both releases are explicitly about operational agents, not just chat assistants. For Opus 4.6, cloud distribution is a major launch vector. Anthropic positioned it as generally available on Vertex AI and deployable via Google Cloud Marketplace, with features like adaptive thinking generally available, effort parameters generally available, compaction in preview, and 1 million token context in preview. It was also announced on Microsoft Foundry on the same day, emphasizing end-to-end delegated tasks, governed enterprise agents, and premium pricing beyond 200K tokens. For GPT 5.3 Codex, OpenAI's immediate ecosystem focus is the Codex toolchain itself. The Codex app for macOS is framed as a multi-agent orchestration surface with work trees and reusable skills, and OpenAI explicitly doubled rate limits on paid plans and temporarily included Codex for free-tier users to broaden adoption. Pricing posture differs notably too. Anthropic provides explicit per-token pricing with a premium tier for extremely long prompts, plus a US-only inference option at a 1.1 times multiplier. OpenAI's public API pricing page, as of this snapshot, lists GPT 5.2 Codex and earlier models but not GPT 5.3 Codex, reinforcing the API soon status. Safety and cybersecurity became unusually central to this conversation. OpenAI's system card takes a precautionary posture for GPT 5.3 Codex, explicitly stating it is treated as high capability in the cybersecurity domain under their preparedness framework, marking the first launch treated that way. It is also treated as high capability and risk in bio and chemical domains, while not reaching high capability on AI self-improvement. The system card reports improved destructive action avoidance scores and a cyber range combined pass rate showing GPT 5.3 Codex, as a step up versus comparison models at 80%. Third-party evaluation results from Apollo Research describe stronger sabotage capabilities in a sabotage suite, while also describing overall low but non-zero rates of covert action. Anthropic's framing emphasizes that intelligence gains do not come at the cost of safety, citing low rates of misaligned behaviors in automated audits and the lowest over-refusal rate among recent Claude models. Separately, Axios reported that Anthropic shared Opus 4.6 found over 500 previously unknown high-severity security flaws in open-source libraries in a sandboxed setup, each validated by Anthropic staff or external security researchers, and that Anthropic is adding security controls that can create friction even for legitimate research. Both releases are clearly pushing the conversation from can they code to how do we deploy them safely, log their actions, and limit the blast radius when they are operating autonomously. Thank you for listening to AI Convo Cast. Please don't forget to rate, review, and share if you like what you hear. Thanks and hope to see you again next time.